Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're taking another deep dive into The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It's a #1 worldwide bestseller. It is a popular text amongst the feminists, and it's really something that is becoming a cultural influence to the same degree as Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, okay? But amongst a specific demographic. Assalamualaikum camouflages here. Alright, so this is a very wordy text with subtle political messaging in it, okay? And the author herself is not very pro-Christianity. She is a feminist. She doesn't like Islam. She only likes the Jays, okay? And by us digging into this text, we are able to see what the imagery is that is used in political ads and whatnot by feminists online. So on X, on Instagram, you will often come across some reference to The Handmaid's Tale. Now, let's dig in as we were doing. So remember, Offglen is the walking partner for our main character, okay? And Janine is the character who is kind of getting picked on, right? And, well, Janine's baby didn't make it, and she's been transferred to a new household in order to produce another baby. Okay, so we're at the point where our main character and Offglen are having a dialogue about Janine, okay? Let's begin. I can't say, Bismillah, I can't say I do know, or Offglen will wonder how. As far as she's aware, she herself is my only source for this kind of information, of which she has a surprising amount. How would she have found out about Janine? The Marthas? Janine's shopping partner? Listening at closed doors to the wives over their tea and wine, spinning their webs? So what is she illustrating here for us is the grapevine. I'm sure you've heard of that phrase. Now, the Marthas are like the house wenches, and they're the ones who obviously are gonna know the gossip, the in and outs. Wives gossiping over tea and wine, funny a stereotype, but quite true. Now, Janine's shopping partner, remember, the handmaidens are not allowed to go out unless they have a female walking companion, and they have to go upon a specific route. So that's how the walking partner would know, okay? Will Serena Joy talk about me like that if I do as she wants? Agreed to it right away. Really, she didn't care. Anything with 2 legs and a good you-know-what was fine with her. They aren't squeamish. They don't have the same feelings we do. And the rest of them, leaning forward in their chairs, my dear, oh horror and prurience. How could she? Where? When? So what is she getting at here? How the wives' perception of the handmaids, that they're very loose, they're very trampy. They, go from one household to the other, even though it's not really their choice. They're kind of forced by that by the government. So, of Gilead, it's not exactly their fault, but they did sign up for that position. Now, don't forget, Serena Joy, that's the wife of the commander. So that's the handmaiden's boss, essentially, right? Remember, Serena Joy was talking with our main character about her going with the help guy, Nick, in order to get her pregnant because they really want a baby in the household, okay? So she's worried about what Serena Joy will say about her with the other wives. Will she gossip and call her harlot? Stuff like that. Which is a legitimate concern. As they did, no doubt, with Janine. That's terrible, I say. It's like Janine, though, to take it upon herself to decide the baby's flaws were due to her alone. But people will do anything rather than admit that their lives have no meaning. No use, that is. No plot. One morning while we were getting dressed, I noticed that Janine was still in her white cotton nightgown. She was just sitting there on the edge of her bed. I looked over towards the double doors of the gymnasium where the aunts usually stood to see if she'd noticed, but the aunt wasn't there. By that time, they were more confident about us. Sometimes they left us unsupervised in the classroom and even the cafeteria for minutes at a time. So notice here, so minutes at a time. So lots of supervision. Now the handmaids, heavily are heavily monitored. They don't really get privacy. Okay? And so what you're getting at here, the gymnasium, because remember, they've taken over and repurposed buildings, so the handmaidens are being trained in like an old school facility called the Red Center. Assalamu alaikum, Shug. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for sharing your time and knowledge with us. These lives have fast become a welcome part of my daily ritual. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Good to hear that. And so, they're in the gymnasium. Now, why would the aunts... Now, the aunts, don't forget, they're a ploy, like a mimicry of nuns. Remember how in movies nuns would always be depicted as cruel? Think of how Game of Thrones depicted that lady who says shame, shame to Cersei and tortures her. Okay? The High Sparrow's women. So that's obviously a reference to the Catholic Church, at least in Hollywood cinematic representation. So the aunts here are like nuns would be portrayed in common classical media, okay? And from a negative perspective, right? And they're always watching the handmaidens because they don't trust them and they want to keep them under supervision. But what this author is getting at is that, oh, we're always being made to be watched because we're not trusted. We want to have privacy. But as we know, when they get privacy, they get into shenanigans. Assalamu alaikum, amplifier. Okay. Probably she ducked out for a smoke or a cup of coffee. Now the aunts can smoke and drink coffee, but the handmaidens can't. Okay. Shug says, or like the series C with Jason Momoa, where established morals and religion are constantly poked fun at. Oh, I haven't seen that. Interesting. Jason Momoa is Aquaman. Khal Drogo. Khal Drogo. Aloha. Oh wait, he's not Hawaiian, he's Samoan. I forget. Look, I said to Alma, who had the bed next to mine. Alma looked at Janine. Then we both walked over to her. Get your clothes on, Janine, Alma said, to Janine's white back. We don't want extra prayers on account of you, but Janine didn't move. So what is this? Extra prayers on account of you. So, the author here has made prayers as a form of punishment. Now, for us Muslims, we wouldn't call salah, prayer, a punishment. But remember, you'll see a lot of liberal feminists. They have these meltdowns of a Christian nationalism or Christian theocracy. And they also complain about an Islamic theocracy. Because why? Prayers would be pushed. And so, if one of the members of the handmaids don't obey the rules, don't follow the routine, they're supposed to be getting dressed, Janine's kind of out of whack, well, everyone will get punished based upon one person not conforming. So we call that collective punishment. So the handmaidens have collective punishment, and one of the forms of punishment is prayer. Now, for me and you, obviously, if we're religious, prayers are a form of connecting us to our Maker, getting nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and are like a form of meditation that bring us peace and internal harmony and regulate our breathing. We see massive benefits. But remember, to a rabid, foaming at the mouth, atheistic rat femme, you know, if you told her to pray and howl at the moon, she'd be like, cool, nature worship, pagan worship, Gaia worship. But to pray to a monotheistic or at least an Abrahamic God, they find that to be oppressive. So it's important for us to see how prayers are framed as a punishment. And you can see how the author is putting that into the atmosphere. And now when you come across Handmaiden Tale political art, you will now understand it has a very anti-religious ethos to it. By that time, Moria had come over. It was before she'd broken free. The second time, she was still limping from what they'd done to her feet. Now, if you recall, Moria is like this raunchy... She reminds me of Ellie from The Last of Us. The HBO series, rather. Not the video game, The Last of Us. Ellie has still a feminine vibe in the first game. She loses that by the second game. Okay? But the actress who plays... I'm skipping on her name. In the HBO series, The Last of Us with Pedro Pascal, she has a very raunchy vibe. She's good at her acting, no doubt, okay? But what I'm trying to get here is that the character Moria is a bit saucy and kind of tomboyish, but she's also very skanky. She's like a hybrid of Ellie from The Last of Us and Shiv from the HBO series Succession. That's how I picture her in my head. And so, remember, our main character finds Moria to be this sort of brave, bold, bombastic boss babe, and who's like tough and is trying to make women stronger and more determined and individualistic and non-conforming. Okay? So it's very important to see in this book what characters are praised and how they're framed, how they're described, what happens to their character, and then you'll be able to see more about what the author is upon. She went around to the bed so she could see Janine's face. Now remember, she tried to escape once, and they beat her feet up, right? But then the second time, if you recall, she breaks free because she tied up one of the aunts and escaped, and then took over the aunt's uniform. "Come here," she said to Alma and me. The others were beginning to gather too. There was a little crowd. "Go on back," Moria said to them. "Don't make a thing of it. What if she walks in?" I was looking at Janine. Her eyes were open, but they didn't see me at all. They were rounded, wide, and her teeth were bared in a fixed smile. Through her smile, though her teeth, she was whispering to herself. I had to lean close to her. So Janine is in a stupor, okay? She's in a mental shock. She's not doing too well. And the other handmaidens are like, hey, we cannot have this going on right now. Janine's going to get us all in trouble, and we're going to have to help her. And Moria is taking the charge in that. You know what I mean? Shug says, books like this often reveal the worldview of the writer and what they're trying to convince you of, especially the use of rhetorical devices. Yes, because there's some authors that separate themselves from their works. This is not one of those books. She definitely has an angle here. Okay. And then we see that, Janine, the character, is not doing so well, and that Moria's been the one to be sought to bring her about. You know what? How you always see in movies, someone's in a daze, then someone comes and slaps them. Wake up, snap out of it. This is what's happening here. Okay? Hello, she said, but not to me. My name's Janine. I'm your wait person for this morning. Can I get you some coffee to begin with? Christ, said Moria beside me. Don't swear, said Alma. So what's happening here is she's mumbling back her days when she was a free woman who was a server. She's kind of forgetting where she is and the new society she's in and what she's supposed to be doing. So she's having a sort of psychotic break, right? Moria took Janine by the shoulders and shook her. Snap out of it, Janine said. She said to Janine roughly. And don't use that word. Janine smiled. You have a nice day now, she said. Moria slapped her across the face, twice, back and forth. Get back here, she said. Get right back here. You can't stay there. You aren't there anymore. That's all gone. Janine's smile faltered. She put her hand up to her cheek. Why did you hit me for? She said. Wasn't it good? I can bring you another. You didn't have to hit me. Don't you know what they'll do? Moria said. Her voice was low, but hard, intent. Look at me. My name is Moria, and this is the Red Center. Look at me. Janine's eyes began to focus. Moria, she said. I don't know any Moria. They won't send you to the infirmary, so don't think about it, Moria said. They won't mess around with trying to cure you. They won't even bother to ship you to the colonies. You go too far away and they just take you up to the chemistry lab and shoot you. Then they burn you up with the garbage like an unwoman, so forget it. So what do we learn here right now? Boom. What has the author dropped here? Lots of layered symbolism. The infirmary is for like people who got hurt and injured. She thinks maybe Janine's faking a psychotic break so she can get out of the Red Center, which shows us what? That handmaidens are known to fake an illness in order to get into a better situation or something like that. And she's also pointing out the lack of patience and mental health care in Gilead for the handmaids. It's either put up or shut up, or you're going to end up in a mass grave. Now, the colonies, if you recall, there's a lot of pollution there, a lot of fallout. This is a society where, you know, like a Chernobyl, worse than a Chernobyl type of atmosphere, alright? And it's easy for people to get cancers and have their hair fall out and you name it because of all the toxic sludge, okay? So this is also a text that touches on pollution. Now, it is true, in the second book, you can see the ruthlessness of the regime. That if you don't conform, you don't follow the rules, they go full Pol Pot on you, okay? They're not taking time to kind of give you flowers and tell you you're special and hand you a teddy bear and watch you rock back and forth. It's more ruthless, okay? The purpose is handmaidens are to give birth so Gilead can go up, and the population numbers are dwindling because of pollution, so it's not time to play games. And food is short because Gilead is warring with Canada, and there's a political civil war going on, and so they don't want to spare resources on women who aren't going to be up for the mission, okay? Now, she mentioned cremation. So the handmaidens that are become unwomans, they get cremated, okay? So you can imagine the smell and the processing centers. I want to go home, Janine said. She began to cry. Jesus God, Moria said, that's enough. She'll be here in 1 minute, I promise you, so put your goddamn clothes on and shut up. She's very masculine. That is kind of funny, because you can kind of see her saying that to her. So the contrast of the weakness and frailty and snivelry, and mousiness of Janine, who's been fully beaten by the Gileadian system, compared to the very secular, atheist, feminist mindset that Moria has. So the two characters are representative of two different mindsets, and their speech patterns are illustrated for us so we can see what system has produced a more tough woman, right? And so that's intentional. The author wants Moria to seem like the one who's got it all figured out, so that you psychologically connect with that character and say like, well, I don't want to be weak like Janine. You know, and what does Janine represent? Christian submission, Christian ethos, Christian duty, right? Whereas Moria represents a sort of rebellious, contrarian, not necessarily Jezebel spirit, but one that questions and is not submissive at all. Okay? And also has a problem with authority. So you can see that contrast with how the characters interact with each other. Okay? And then it says here, she does that again. I'm not here, Moria said to me. You just have to slap her like that. You can't let her go slipping over the edge. That stuff is catching. She must have already been planning then how she was gonna get out. So what is Moria saying here? You know, hey, you gotta make people snap out of it because people might decide that's the way they're gonna go through with it. Is, you know, that's just not cool. You're not gonna allow such like a mind virus, right? You hear that expression a lot, like a frenzy. You don't let the frenzy spread, okay? Now we're in a new section, and I thought we would touch on this because I'm going through some of my annotations. Sometimes I'll read to you the whole page or specific things that I've highlighted. Okay, let's see. Okay, the sitting space in the courtyard is filled now. We rustle and wait. At last the commander in charge of this service comes in. He's balding and squarely built and looks like an aging football coach. He's dressed in his uniform, sober black with the rows of insignia and decorations. It's hard not to be impressed, but I make an effort. I try to imagine him in bed with his wife and his handmaid, fertilizing away like mad, like a rutting salmon, pretending to take no pleasure in it. When the Lord said, "Be fruitful and multiply," did he mean this man? This commander ascends the steps to the podium, which is draped with red cloth, embroidered with a large right-winged eye. He gazes over the room, and our soft voices fade out. He doesn't even have to raise his hands. Then his voice goes into the microphone and out through the speakers, robbed of its lower tone so that it is sharply metallic, as if it's being made not by his mouth, his body, but by the speakers themselves. His voice is metal-colored, horn-shaped. Okay, so here what do we see? She's showing you a sort of authoritarian, all-seeing eye imagery. Okay, one eye. I mean, it's kind of really overplayed. I mean, in occultism, having the one eyes got a long history, and the red cloth, you know, when you're dealing with a regime that is ruthless, the color red really does become quite jarring to the eye. And when you think of Adolf, Mean Mr. Mustache, the German Führer, his insignia was red, with the ugly swastika that he took from the Hindus. But, no, not the Hindus, was it the Buddhists? I forget if it was the Buddhists or the Hindus. But the point is that he used red. That ugly fire engine red that's very jarring upon the eye. It's not even a beautiful crimson red. It's like fire engine red, like boom, right in your face. And then it becomes a symbol, something else. So an eye with red, well, now you're doing occultic shenanigans here. Okay? And with the commanders having lots of regalia on themselves, you can see the sort of militaristic angle. Shug says, and usually bright colors like red indicate the bearer of the color being either poisonous or something to avoid. Very interesting. Yeah, that's just good point. Good point. And then this is the speech that the commander gives. So think of like you know how like the Hunger Games? I don't know if you've seen that. You know that head guy? I forget his name. But you know when he gives a speech, the podium is designed in a certain way. You know, there's always the way in which Hollywood frames that type of a scene. Even when Daenerys Targaryen, when she has burned down King's Landing and she's giving her speech, it was said that Emilia Clarke, the actress who plays Daenerys Targaryen, she said she watched Hitlerian speeches in order to get the the body language down, and the Dothraki she speaks sounds less Dothraki and more Germanic. I kind of picked up on that, even though it's a made-up language. The way she's talking, it sounds very German-esque instead of the previous seasons where the Dothraki had their own language. Suspect. But you know when all the soldiers are lined up and then Jon Snow's walking through the ranks and there's this energy of like sadness and gray and ash and snow, and it's just like a gloom and doom. The authoritarian is speaking. So that is basically the type of vibe and scenery we got going on here. Okay? Very cliche, even though it can be accurate. Like, you can look at speeches from Mussolini and see that, but it's kind of really overplayed. Okay? Today is the day of Thanksgiving. He begins a day of praise. I tune out through the speech about victory and sacrifice. Then there's a long prayer about unworthy vessels. Then a hymn. Then there's a Balman Gilead. Okay. Now notice here. Unworthy vessels. What is she talking about, the author here? What is our main character getting at? Worthy vessels are women who are able to get pregnant and give birth to a healthy child. Whereas if you're unworthy, you're infertile or you've only given birth to deformed children. And if you're not a good handmaid and you don't obey the rules, you'll be shipped off to the colonies or entered into a mass grave. Okay? You have to conform to the rules to be a worthy vessel, the vessel of life. Okay? So, and mention how it said here a long prayer. So religion is incorporated in this woman's dystopian novel. This is, again, it's always important to reiterate. While you'll see libertine feminists, whenever a Christian is like restricting abortion or saying women shouldn't dress like skanks or something like that, the feminists freak out and reference the Handmaid's Tale, right? And so it's important to examine that. Now comes in the main item. The 20 angels enter, newly returned from the fronts. Now the angels is like soldiers, okay? And they've been fighting. Now, why did she choose to name the warriors angels? She wants to insult the word angel, to degrade it, but also to poke fun at the Christians. To be like, oh look, that's not angelic behavior. But at the same time, when I think about Islam, how Malik, I think his name is, he'll be an angel in hell, and he will not smile in hell, and he will obey Allah, and you're not going to escape, you can't get out, and the angels push you back into the flames of hell. So in Islam, the angels, they're not just these weird Christian types where they're like, la 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 la, and they're floating around. And if you notice in Christian art, the angels are very sexualized, especially female angels. They draw them as milky whites. You never see a black female angel, Chinese, Arab. It's always a blonde hair, blue-eyed, milky white woman with a busty chest, tiny waist, and a very a dress that's looks like a nightgown. You know, it's very sexualized. Christian men, they really like to be horny and fap to angels. So the author here could be taking a dig at Christians in general by taking the word angels and applying it to ruthless soldiers who are mowing down people who won't conform to the empire of Gilead. Newly decorated, accompanied by their honor guard, marching 1, 2, 1, 2 into the central open space. So marching. So I'm sure when you've seen China, you've seen videos of China, you know, they do those choreographed military marching parades. And so the author has made sure to incorporate that as well. So what she has done, she's mentioned the marching, the red, the eye. She's showed you the wall in the past readings. Remember, there's a wall where dissidents are hung from, and their corpses are displayed in order to get people to conform to the rules. So she has taken the classical cliche depictions of an authoritarian society and inserted them into the book. And so the marching, what is that? What did the pathetic Nazis do? The goose stepping? What is it called? Goose stepping? I forget. But she's made sure to incorporate that as well, that imagery, into her series, okay? Now, here we go. And now the 20 veiled daughters in white come shyly forward, their mothers holding their elbows. It's mothers, not fathers, who give away daughters these days and help with the arrangement of the marriages. So she's upset at arranged marriages. In the second book, she really kind of shows that one of the main characters, Baby Nicole, we'll call her, she doesn't want to have an arranged marriage, and all her suitors are really ugly, okay? And so she's not excited. So she's getting at arranged marriages as oppressive. And then notice she takes a jab at veiled daughters. The hijab, the burqa, and just some Christians would wear a veil back in the day. Roman society, some Roman women as well, would veil when they would go out amongst the plebs. And, you know, when you get married, you would wear a veil that was white for pure virgins, but you got women who have like 50 body count wearing white on their wedding day with a veil. It's quite ridiculous. But the veil used to mean something, you know? And so when she's talking about the shy veiled daughters, she's getting at the contrast of the high status of the pious aristocratic girls, how they are veiled, and then also how they're bringing religious purity back. Now remember our main character, Moria. Moria is a degenerate, okay? Total degenerate. And she's seen as the heroes, whereas the veiled girls, her pure girls, are seen as sort of like oppressed, manipulated beings. So this author consistently frames modesty and piety as oppression, right? These girls haven't been allowed to be alone with a man for years. For however many years we've all been doing this. So look at that. What is the author getting at here? Oh, they're so oppressed because they haven't gotten ran through. Remember, why is this important? Because for feminists, sexual liberation can only occur when women run through as many men as they desire. They're on a carousel, you know, just next, and they don't really have that concept of my body is something spiritual, and they don't think the female body gets defiled and worse with the more men they sleep with. They think they unlock this sort of occultic goddess energy that allows them to dominate men, sort of like I picture it as the Angelina Jolie Maleficent character with the horns and stuff, the bony cheek, the ashen gray, just that they're just like a monster, right? And see, when I read this, my daughters, alhamdulillah, they've never been alone with any boys. Good parents, they don't want their daughters to be running about town like fast girls. In the hoods, we have an expression called fast girls. What are fast girls? Fast girls are preteen, like they're like teenagers, and they've already had, you know, relations with a male. And their parents let them run around town. They don't care where they are. They're latchkey kids in a point where they in and go as they want. Whereas religious parents, both Muslim and Christian, Christians not so much, because lots of Christians let their daughters have sleepovers, horrendous. But for the most part, Muslims have decided, hey, you know, free mixing is haram. Okay? So what does that mean? It means Muslims say no. Boys and girls at a certain age aren't supposed to be free mixing, and if they are around each other, there needs to be a male chaperone. This preserves and protects the girl from false accusations, and I'd also argue protects the boys from false accusations, because as we know, the women today weaponize lies to accuse men of foul deeds so they can ruin their careers. Feminists will deny this, but it is a political tool, an act of revenge for systemic misogyny, right? That's how they want to bring down the patriarchy, is by creating false accusations that tear apart men's careers so that men are afraid. Okay, long story short. So, who is she poking fun of, the author here? She's saying that these veiled daughters who are dressing in white, who are going to have arranged marriages, they're obviously virgins, and they've never been alone with a man. She's framing them as these sort of, oh, poor them, they weren't drinking whiskey, you know, in the back of a Ford Explorer, you know, parked behind a 7-Eleven at 3 a.m. Oh, they haven't been alone with a guy. Oh. And it's like, yeah, they've been protected and they have a good reputation. This shows the resentment here. Feminists don't think, on average, that a pure girl is anything to celebrate, right? They see more of the seductress as the empowered being, whereas the pure girl, who is shy, timid, and religious, they see her as what they call a pick-me-sha, a pick-me. And they actually resent those girls to their core, but won't ever really admit it. Because that would mean they would have to face their own degeneracy, their own filth. And especially if they caught an STD, unfortunately, they hate those girls even more. Because while these chicks were being alone with men in cars and parties, you name it, they catch multiple STDs, and then here comes a virgin whose parents loved her and taught her better, who she listened to. She's gonna get a good husband, whereas the dirty girl has herpes and gonorrhea, and she's got that anger inside of her because she's now seen as less than, and she doesn't want to admit she's less than. And so when you have these lines in here, the feminists will say all men are dangerous, men are a threat to women and children, but then on the flip side make fun of women who've never been alone with a man and say that you're endangering your children by not letting them be alone with men. How? Because you're not letting them be sexually liberated and sexually empowered. So they're very backwards. One minute, a feminist is walking to her car in the parking garage terrified, and then the next saying, oh, a man is going to hurt me in the parking garage, which can happen. No doubt, be careful. But then the next thing, when a mom won't let her daughter be alone with a boy, they say the mom is oppressing the daughter. So you see the sort of flip-flopping that goes along with the feminist ethos. And so it's no accident that such a sentence is included in this book. It's not there by accident. Are they old enough to remember anything of the time before? Playing baseball in jeans and sneakers, riding their bicycles, reading books all by themselves? See, what is she trying to get at here? Children shouldn't be supervised. They should be left to just do as they want, free range. No helicopter parents, which is a disaster. Okay? That is not safe. Good parents want to protect their children. If a pig will be around its babes, and if I go up to the sow and I take her piglet, she's gonna bite me, she's gonna scream, and that piglet is gonna squeal so that I put it down so its mama can have it back. If I pick up a chick, a baby chick, right? Chicken, a hatchling, that mama chicken, sometimes she'll like flutter her wings and stuff, and like she don't want you to touch it. Even if like a chihuahua who's given birth and the pups are still, they're blind and they're deaf, they can't see yet. If I go up to that mama dog and I take her puppy, she's staring at me the whole time, like, give me back my baby. But for some reason, there are adult women who think that you should just let your child roam around. I was totally free range as a kid. Total free range. Like, nobody cared anything at all. I could do whatever I wanted, and I did. And thank Allah, nothing happened to me, but that was the 90s. I was walking on train tracks, climbing fences, walking under bridges, riding my bike. You know, times I ran into danger, yes, but I got away. And it's just not safe. And my daughters know. No, that's not what's happening. Absolutely not. Okay? Now, remember, she's trying to get at the way in which daughters will be just free to do whatever they want. Shug says, I had a curfew and all kinds of structures in place, but we still found ways to get into stuff. True, you still find a way, loopholes. The curfew point and the structure is a great angle, though. This is a great point. Now, I want you to notice something, okay? This may seem subtle, but look at it. Playing baseball, okay? In jeans and sneakers. Now, that's very tomboyish clothing. I had tomboyish clothing as a kid. And now that I'm older, I would wonder, why aren't the boys looking at me the same as the girls in the pretty dresses? I didn't understand why. I'd be like, what's so different? I was climbing trees, I was playing basketball. But then now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, I wasn't dressing feminine enough. I had a very masculine, tomboyish energy. And some men, they like the tomboy, but it's not the same. And I didn't know, and my grandma didn't teach. My grandma was feminine, but she didn't care. She never really was involved with my clothes, and I worked and I bought my own clothes, and she never did my hair for school. She was just a very poor female guardian. Same with my mom. Even though my mom was drop dead gorgeous when she was younger, because she was an escort and a showgirl in Las Vegas, she didn't teach me any of that feminine, how to doll yourself up. No woman took that thing upon me, so I dressed myself. And, you know, the whole jeans thing, like, I had grass stains on my pants, I had sneakers, you know, I rode my bike, I had a mountain bike, I read books, you know. But that's a very masculine, unfeminine way of presenting yourself. And now I understand why you introduce little girls to princess dresses and crowns. Why you now, I'm not saying, like, okay, there's a how do I put it? There's a balance of being like a Scandinavian warrior princess who's still feminine, and, well, like Wonder Woman is a weird hybrid, right? Xena, weird hybrid. You know, you're feminine, but you have a warrior fan energy, which is totally absurd. It's made up, right? Because in reality, Shug says, or Xena, warrior princess. Yeah, exactly. The woman herself has a vivacious form, but she's engaging in activity that's masculine. Now, if you look at the average female basketball player, and then you look at a beauty pageant queen, some of the winners, you can clearly see the masculine sport with the masculine female frame versus the feminine graceful form. You're like, there's a difference in the allure, in the beauty standard, and the, you know, shock and awe, quite honest, right? That's why female sports have a harder time regaining viewers if they're not showing the female form. Why volleyball players play in booty shorts, swimmers are in basically showing their camel toe, is because they have to show something for the male gaze. And so, I mean, us women can complain about that, but it is what it is, okay? And so, when the author here is like, oh, she should be wearing sneakers and riding a bike and being independent, being able to be alone with boys, versus what the characters are actually allowing is, these are veiled girls, and they've never been alone with a boy. So what the author has done is she's set up the tomboys who are free range as superior and liberated to the protected, guarded, veiled girls, and a strong attack on Islam with such rhetoric. Shug says, I remember turning on WNBA by accident once and thinking, why are these college dudes moving so slow? Then I realized it was women. Jeez. Yeah, I played basketball, and I thank Allah that I didn't take it seriously. Assalamualaikum, Loco Lico. I'm very happy because that would have been a total waste of my time. You know? And it's just not right. So you can learn self-defense classes like, what's her name? Ronda Rousey. There's some Holly Holm. There's some women who can have an athletic build and do martial arts, but when they're ready to dress for the town, they can pull a 10, right? They can fly. But with other sports, that's not possible, right? And so it's so important for us to see the messaging in this text and who's seen as oppressed and whose system is seen as more liberating, okay? And so, you know, remember jeans and sneakers? I remember Imran Hussein, he's that old guy who say filthy schoolboy makes it up. He had interesting points about how pants are masculine. And when he started talking about that, I was like, that's kind of a really good point. And then I started looking at vintage art, and women didn't wear pants. They wore dresses and long skirts. And then, little by little, the pantsuit Hillary Clinton energy came out, and women changed, you know? And so, Local Eco says there's a debate on if that tall woman, Brittany, the one who got arrested in Russia, right? Or a guy, she's super famous in basketball, she even has a wife. Yeah, the black person, right? Who got arrested for taking weed to Russia, and then America had to trade a actual killer dude for that basketball player. I'm skipping on the name, but I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, I think that's a man. You know, I think that's definitely a man. But that's one hell of a butch. I'll put it that way. Local Lico says, your culture is quite funny, man. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. Yeah. So, again, I think it's so important because the feminists, many of them, as I mentioned to you previously, are also lesbians. And in the lesbian movement, there is the feminine one and then there's the butch one. Okay? Now, the thing is, your mama teaching you how to be feminine is such, and your grandma, is such a blessing. It's like, when you don't have that, it is very detrimental to your development as a woman. And I know how that feels. And so when the feminists are promoting like tomboyish clothing, it makes me think of a tweet I saw. I haven't posted it yet. I have it saved in my screenshots. But it talked about how the Boss Babes were the first trans influence. And I thought, wait, what? And it was pointing out how when women started to dress like men with suits, ties, you know, that was actually starting to push this sort of trans movement. And now you have women cutting off their breasts, having stitched tits, and wanting to grow beards. And how did this all start? And when you look at the rebellion against silky, shiny, long hair, being a certain size, having a softer tone, the classical ideals of a woman, well, who came in and tried to turn that upside down? It was the feminists. That's why they grow their armpit hair, grow their hair legs, and that's why they shave their heads or get a lot of piercings, or they dye their hair an ugly color, right? And so you can see how they reject the standard of don't be alone with men, be shy, stuff like that. You can see it. And then in this text, we see that philosophy coming straight through. Okay? even though some of them are no more than 14. Start them soon is the policy. There's not a moment to be lost. Still, they'll remember, and the ones after them will for 3 or 4 or 5 years. But after that, they won't. They'll always have been in white. In groups of girls, they'll always have been silent. So what is she saying here? In groups of girls. Now, I can admit, as a youth, some girls were insufferable to be around because they're so dumb. And then the boys are having interesting conversations. And you can see the difference there. And my grandpa would tell me, my step-grandpa would tell me sometimes, don't play with the boys. He tried his best, but he was always working. Don't play with the boys. But the girls would be very boring. They're airheaded, bubble-brained, chicken heads. And I'd be like, oh man, this sucks. And then the boys are talking about all kinds of stuff. And you're like, they're actually having intelligent conversations, and I'm stuck with the bimbos. And so, you know, it's hard when you're... Because not all women are the same. But I had a mindset where, like... Okay, I'm a philosopher. I want to talk about real stuff, and these girls were more vapid, like gossipy, like Courtney, she's wearing that pink sweater and it makes her look fat. And I'd be like, oh my god. And men would be like, did you see that rocket launch? There was a tank, this, and that. Like, they would talk about real things, and you'd be like, whoa, they're talking about real things. But the girls would be more shallow. They talk about people, whereas men would talk about things, events, history. Now, I know today, because of the internet, us women can find each other that think like that. But even if when I look at my analytics, I think over 80% of the people who follow me are male. Whereas women, they don't want to talk about that stuff, you know? Shook says, Mon raging in the corner while the women are arguing over Vital Sasson and Liz Claiborne. Yes, exactly. You know? And it's like, it's just so different. And so, when the author here includes gender segregation, I can see what she's trying to get at because I've experienced it, but at the same time, I wish, now that I'm a mom, right? I've been a mom for over a decade, but I wish public schools separated the boys and the girls. You know, the boys now are extremely vulgar, you know? I go, like before I would go and I'd wait for my daughter, and the things these boys are talking about, and I'm standing right there, and you're like, these kids don't even, they don't even feel shy around adults with what they're saying, and they're, like, talking about, like, gross things. I'm standing right here with the stroller waiting for my eldest to get out of school, and these boys don't give a damn, and... It's wild. Now, when the girls ain't that much better. But I'm just saying that because of the way these boys are, it should be different. Local Lico says, bro, the Japanese people that don't even believe in God figured out that kids should be separated. Japan has segregation in the schools? I didn't know that. But I really do think it's the best idea. I really do. You know, because it's just boys' energy at a certain point. It's not, you don't feel safe if you're trying to raise a good girl. The boys hit puberty and they're thinking about X, Y, and Z, and you're like, I want that. It's like, I don't want that cheetah, I don't want that tiger around my lamb, my little lamb. Like, get out of here, you need to be protected. But a feminist will be like, no, let her know. And you're just like, ugh. You know? And I think it's healthier for boys to be around the male energy, because the way the school systems treat boys, when you really think about it, they don't really allow boys to be boys. You know, girls cry easier, so the boys are always getting in trouble. You know? Loco Lico says, yes, it's been like that for a long time. Maybe now they have mixed as well, but it's a very normal thing in Japan. Oh, did you live there? Do you live there? Or, like, did you travel there? Or you're just someone who's really fascinated with Japan? Because I know there's a lot of people like that. They are really into Japan. And so, yeah. So I want you to rewind and think about What has the author said thus far in the text? Favorite character. Oh, look who he says. I drink wine. I know stuff, man. Tyrion Lannister quote. I drink, I drink, and I know things. Saucy little imp. Just kidding. So the author here has talked about jeans, sneakers, playing baseball. It's not. She didn't mention ballet. She didn't mention doing a graceful form or Pilates or what was that Brazilian dance that they used to do? Oh, I forget, man. But I remember growing up there was a Brazilian dance that all the girls were doing. You know, I can't remember. I forgot. But the point is, she's shaming women being protected. No, that's different. That's different. Brazilians had something. Oh man. It was like a class too where they would dance, but it was like all the girls were like, "Oh, it's really burns calories and it's very feminine." Watch it come to me after the stream is over. But the point is that the author is mentioning masculine clothing and behaviors for girls and seeing that as the ideal, right? And then she mentions they'll always have been silent. Now, silence is something that's very hard for some women to get. Okay, let's dig into this right here because there's a lot of messaging in this book. Okay, let's really dig into this. For a long time, I thought you had to be loud, the loudest one in the room, to laugh loud, to be obnoxious in order to get the male attention. I made this mistake in junior high and high school. Okay? To get a guy's attention, you have to laugh loud, be bubble and vivacious, you know? And so when a man says, like, be quiet and make me a sandwich, you're like, oh, that's so mean. But then, as I've gotten older, and you really start to look at the psychology of men, being a chit-chat box who won't shut up, or who's always, like, talking... Okay, let me give you an example. One of the best examples I've seen. Bronn, in Game of Thrones, he's gonna marry Lady Allison or something. He's gonna get a castle, right? It's after Jaime finds him and he goes to visit Bronn and his soon-to-be bride, the blonde girl, and he's like, "Who's that over there?" And like she goes like, "Who's that over there?" And he goes, "That's Jaime fucking Lannister." That famous scene, right? But as Bronn is walking along the beach with his bride, she won't stop yapping. Just yapping, mindlessly yapping. Oh, at the Capitol, they eat this. At the Capitol, they have that. And she's blabbing and blabbing, and Bronn's not listening. And he just like, yep, yep. But you can see the dichotomy of a woman who won't stop talking, who can't see that the person's not engaging. And that hit me like a ton of bricks when that episode aired. Because I was like, because sometimes if I talk too much to my husband, I can see him kind of try to clock out a little bit. Or he's like, yeah. And then I know, like, okay, I gotta like, I have to find another way to get my energy out, which is a great thing about my YouTube channel is that I can talk about whatever I want for people who want to hear, and I don't plague my husband's ears with talking about very niche things that he's not interested in. And what's fascinating is women think they have to have a guy in their life who's got to listen to their long-winded speeches, and that's just not the case, you know? And so it's fascinating. Locally, it's not about talking. I think all women talk like that is just one of those things where men will always clock off. It's not, we do it on purpose. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but like, for example, Tommy Lauren, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, these are bombastic, aggressive, contrarian. Well, Candace is kind of mellowed out. But if you think about old school Tommy Lauren, how she was loud and, rude, uncouth, even though they're pretty looking. Feminists felt even conservative feminists would be like, well, you have to be loud in order to get noticed. And they would always frame the quiet girls as docile women who are about to be oppressed or something. So then you see today how men are openly talking about, no, go for the shy girl. You should want to be with the shy girl, the loudmouth girl who is trying to be the center of attention all the time and who's giggly and bubbly, probably has a high body count, and is probably going to cheat on you with your best friend. You know, the shy girls are more protective, more reserved, they keep your secrets, and they are more trustworthy, and they don't desire the spotlight and won't use you as much for money. So there's some stereotypical archetypes for the loudmouth bimbo and the loudmouth aggressive woman who won't take nothing from no man. And then there's the shy girl, or at least the graceful woman who knows the power of silence at the right time. You know, there's these different modes of personality that we see historically in fiction that resemble reality at the same time, but also today, where now we have access to hearing how men and women think about each other's behavioral traits. So when we have this author here mentioning they'll always have been silent, she's trying to talk about that, oh, well, girls should be loud, they should be alone with boys, they should play masculine sports, and they should be able to go all by themselves, ride their bike willy-nilly, and they should not wear white, and they should go about doing all this jazz. That's when you're like, oh, I see what this feminist agenda is. Now, when you see the Handmaid's Tale art, you know exactly what message is being signaled. That's the point of really digging into this book, because it has sold so many copies and has become a... I haven't watched the show. I don't really feel like I need to watch the show, because most shows cut out a lot of the stuff from the books, so it takes on a life of its own. But I've read both books, the Testaments and this first book, The Handmaid's Tale, and I can see how it's being used already to denote a form of behavior, a code of conduct, and a standard for women. And some people who haven't read the books, you know, no blame on them, they don't actually see the subtleness of what is being promoted, right? And so it's important for us to dig into it, and that's why I've been doing this. This is the 17th video, I believe, and I think we've done over 10 hours alone just discussing the details in this book, because it's rife and ripe with political messaging, right? Now, there's a speech here by the commander. "We've given them more than we've taken away," said the commander. "Think of the trouble they had before. Don't you remember the single bars, the indignity of high school blind dates, the meat market? Don't you remember the terrible gap between the ones who could get a man easily and the ones who couldn't? Some of them were desperate. They starved themselves thin, or pumped their breasts full of silicone. They had their noses cut off. Think of inhuman misery." So this commander just gave what? A speech saying, because we're doing arranged marriages, we are leveling out the dating market and removing, you could even argue, the incel dilemma, and we are encouraging marriage. So, you know, that's what she's trying to be like, oh, how horrible. But the plastic surgery angle is still spot on. He waved a hand at his stacks of old magazines. They were always complaining, problem this, problem that. Remembered the ads in personal columns, bright, attractive woman, 35. This was the way they all got a man. Nobody's left out. And if they did marry, they could be left with a kid, 2 kids. The husband might just get fed up and take off, disappear. They'd have to go on welfare, or else he'd stay around and beat them up. Or if they had a job, the children in daycare were left some brutal, ignorant woman, and they would have to pay for that themselves, out of their own wretched little paychecks. Money was the only measure of worth for everyone. They got no respect as mothers. No wonder they were giving up on the whole business. This way, they're protected. They can fulfill their biological destinies in peace, with full support and encouragement. Now tell me, you're an intelligent person. I like to hear what you think. What did we overlook? Love, I said. Love? Said the commander. What kind of love? Falling in love, I said. The commander looked at me with his candid boy eyes. Oh yes, he said. I've read the magazines. That's what they were pushing, wasn't it? But look at the stats, my dear. Was it really worth it? Falling in love, arranged marriages have always worked out just as well, if not better. Now, this is a thing into the female mind. Romance. Somebody said once on X, romantic comedies are pornography for women. And I was like, what did you say? But then I realized, hold up, wait a minute. That's a good point. Is that women will watch a romantic comedy and they will lust for that even though it isn't real. It's not real. It's very rare. So we look at today with the advent of romantic comedies. Now, Shakespeare had Romeo and Juliet, okay? Disney. Oh, yes. Aladdin and Jasmine and, woo-dee-da. Romance sells. No problem. But love comes and goes. And when you try to understand love, you'll look at you'll see women who will write love letters to serial killers in prison. And you're like, well, this is a crazy world. Because when you start looking at, on average, who women give their love to, you see some people pick the worst of people. And you're like, why would you pick this person? But they confuse love with infatuation, lust with desire, fleeting passions with romance. It's very strange. Messy work. But the freedom to fall in love, the thing about that is you fall in love and then you fall out of love. There's a feminist book called, I think it says How to Not Hate Your Husband After You Have Kids or something like that. And if you look at how many women will marry someone, once the kids show up in the picture, the blue mist goes away. And all of a sudden, the claws come out, you're hormonal, your body's wrecked for a little bit, and you're just like, I don't got no sleep, rawr, I'm a dragon. And it's hard for you to have that love there. Some keep it, but love seems to kind of have a roller coaster impact upon us as women. And men, I think, have more of a sense of duty, where women have more of a sense of consistent romantic expectations. And if the man doesn't reach that, she spirals into depression. And if you think about how many women break up their marriages because they no longer love the man, they'll say, oh, he's a good man, he's super sweet, but we don't have chemistry anymore. So she'll become a single mom, rip her family apart. Men, sometimes you'll see, they will not like their wife anymore. They may sit in the car before they come inside their house, but they'll say, do it for the kids, do it for the kids, do it for the kids. Where a feminist will say the opposite. Or many women will actually say the opposite. No, my happiness matters. Me. I'll just get the kids therapy. That's fine. Me, I. Whereas you'll hear a man say, I'll stay for the kids. And so, when you see, it's fascinating. The whole love angle is so potent of a reality. I don't know what it is. But the whole, I'll be a damsel in distress and someone will rescue me and I'll marry my charming man and he'll love me forever. Like, think of the movie The Notebook. That did all, or the movie Titanic. Jack! Like, this lady was a fiance, she was engaged, right? To a rich guy. Cal was his name. And she cheats on her husband with a homeless vagabond. Jack was homeless. Like, he was a broke bum. But he was handsome. And she wants to run away from life and go be with this broke bum who's handsome. And she falls in love with him. He dies. And she remarries. Rose remarries. And she's still thinking about her ex, even though she's married to a guy she had kids with. Now, think about if you're that guy who married Rose from the Titanic. Your wife is still lusting after the guy she fell in love with who didn't provide her anything. He slept with her, made her feel special, and you're paying bills, you're going to work, and your wife's head is still linked to someone else. And women will look at the story of Rose and the Titanic and say that's true love. But Jack had no job, you know. Loco says, "Hey, don't you dare speak on Jack like that, bro. Froze to death for her." Yeah, I've seen memes where there's two people can fit on the raft. You know what I mean? But she left a guy who had money, wealth, and status, and who wouldn't let her be a spoiled brat. She cheated, so she's an adulteress. Right? She couldn't keep her legs closed. She got nude real fast. And then when she remarries, she's still thinking about Jack. See what I'm saying? I says cycles of cheap thrills and hollow validation, plastic pretense and fleeting allure. Exactly. And so when we see here in the book that the main character is telling the commander that, you know, love is the epitome of, you know, having that ability to fall in love, really just examine how many women have picked bad men ever since dads stopped being involved in the picking process. This is a hard pill to swallow, but it is ever one I have realized. Because my grandpa, my step-grandpa, my biological grandpa, and my dad took no role in helping me pick a man, you make more mistakes. Oh, you're free, do whatever you want. Go on. Go on, be free. And then you realize, like, a mom will look at, okay, let's say a guy brings home a girl to mama, right? The mom is like, this is a putita, this is a lady, she's not good for you, my boy. Like, son, this lady, she's gonna use you. She's a lady of the night. We'll put it nicely, right? And the mom can see, this is why occultic feminist women don't like mother-in-laws, because they can see what you are and know what you're up to because they perceive female shenanigans. Now, sometimes they can be unjust, no doubt, but when a dad can see what another man is up to, and when men cared who their daughters married instead of eloping. Think about how many movies fetishized eloping. Run away from your family. Look at The Little Mermaid in Disney. The Little Mermaid, think about it. In Disney's Ariel, right? Her dad, he has a lot of daughters. He's the king of the ocean. He's got so much stress, right? And this chick wants to leave her whole family and grow legs, makes a deal with the witch to go be with a man who she barely knows. That's not smart decision making, you know? And so you look at, what kind of messages are told to girls? Don't involve your parents, but then when the relationship goes belly up, they want a bailout from their parents. You know what I mean? You really got to have your family involved now. Not all of us are blessed with good moms and dads. You know, if my mom was to arrange a marriage for me, I would prefer to be single because she has such poor judgment. But she might be able to pick up on something. My dad maybe as well, you know. My dad never once talked to me seriously about what you should look for in a man. Never. Nope. You know. And so a dad can tell you as a daughter, Look, honey, you may think you like this guy, you love this guy, but he's a player, he's a scumbag, he's not good for you, he's gonna use you. And the girl will cry, I want love, daddy, give me love. And then you're just like, you idiot, you know this isn't real. And like, girls will get infatuated, and then they make poor decisions, and then next thing you know, she's a single mom, and you're like, well, now what? You know? And so it's so important that women don't. You have to look at love as like a weapon. What's fascinating as well is you see these rad femmes on X, these radical feminists. They'll be like, how to be a cold woman in your relationship, how to not care, how to be unbothered. Like, they give each other advice on how to be cold and callous. So they're not focusing on romantic love, but they like reading love, about love. And then you see how many feminists write erotica poetry, and you're like, these ladies are a bundle of sticks. They're all scrambled. It don't make no sense what they're talking about. And so the whole arranged marriage thing, obviously, okay, let's take a funny example. The cousin of Rob Stark, who was a Tully, he played Brutus in the HBO series Rome. I forget the character's name, but he had to marry one of the daughters of Walder Frey, and Walder Frey, he was notorious for having ugly daughters. And so on the wedding day, he doesn't know what his wife's gonna look like. She's in a veil, so he's scared he's gonna have to, his arranged marriage will be to an ugly woman. And she turns out to be pretty, right? And Walder Frey gives him a look like, But there is that funny angle of an arranged marriage and how you want someone beautiful, not ugly. But that's the only aspect people really seemed to care about back then. Are they attractive? Okay then. But today, you see the standards of women are much more extreme, even if they themselves don't meet any basic standard. He's got to make this much money, he has to have this. And some of these women will have like 3, 4, 5 kids, and they are not able to have any more kids, but they still want that guy to fund all their lifestyle, to do all this stuff. They don't want to cook for him, they don't want to clean, they got all these weird standards. And you're like, that's wild, you know? And arranged marriages, if you're able to get a good one, what's the problem? You know, if your family is good, like they got sound judgment. But remember, in the text, she's framing falling in love as having no downside. And remember, think about how Catelyn Stark talked about in Game of Thrones, how when she was trying to tell Robb not to fall in love with the lady, right, that he had a duty, he was promised to another, and that he can't break his promise to Walder Frey, right, that he was going to be in an arranged betrothed marriage to one of his daughters, but instead he decided to follow his heart, and he ended up getting murdered at the Red Wedding, if you recall, because he broke his vow, because he chose love, right? And you can just see how when like Catelyn was like, me and your father didn't love each other, we learned to love each other through years of hard work. And then you can see how Ned Stark and Catelyn Stark, they had a good relationship, right? You know, I mean, to a degree, right? But they were an arranged marriage that works out, is the point I'm trying to make. Now, obviously, there's going to be some people in history, I'm sure, who had to marry someone who was absolutely ugly. And that sucks. But she's framing it as all arranged marriages are oppressive and won't work. And allowing a woman to fall in love with anybody and anybody without a patriarchal supervision won't have any downside. And that's just not true. Again, so we can see the examples given in the text about what she's up to. Here's another key aspect. Love, said Aunt Lydia with distaste. Don't let me catch you at it. No mooning and jooning around here, girls, wagging her finger at us. Love is not the point. So, Aunt Lydia, I liked her in this book. In the second book, she becomes a double agent, and the author totally ruins her main character. But love is not the point. Some women, they don't. This is so deep right now. Okay, listen here. When a woman isn't happy in her marriage, and you try to tell her, "Hey, listen, how would your life be if you left him right now? You're gonna have a lot of work." One minute a woman says she's empowered being a single mom, next she says she's a victim. No matter what, a woman wants to be empowered and victimized at the same time. Okay? But if you tell her, like, a woman will say, "I don't want to have intimacy with my husband because I'm not in love right now." And you're like, "No, you have a duty to the marriage bed, man. Handle business. If a hooker can do it, why can't you?" I mean, that sounds vulgar, but it's like this. What is wrong with you? You can't just treat someone like that because your mood swings, and you're not gonna like. If you're gonna have a 50-year relationship, you're gonna go through cold seasons. You know, get it done. So, love is not the like. Oh, well, I have to be in love in order to kiss him and in order to allow him to touch me, and in order for me to cook and clean for him, I have to be feeling love 24/7 all the time. I can't have an off season. If I'm having a mood swing, then my husband has to walk on eggshells around me. You're like, you're a psychopath. You're a psychopath, right? Shook says, and ladies go back and forth a lot on things they thought they wanted, and then they got it, then they realized the wait. That is very true. So true. And so notice here, Aunt Lydia, remember, the aunts cannot get married. So remember I told you they are like the parody of like nuns. Nuns can't get married. And so Aunt Lydia telling them that love isn't the point to relationship and child rearing, this is such a hard-hitting point that it does ring true. If every woman didn't have children because she fell out of love or couldn't get to the type of love she wanted, the human species just wouldn't exist. We would be just very small on the brink of desolation, because love comes and goes in a relationship and it changes over time, and you're gonna go through seasons. And some women, they want to pack it out when there's a rough patch. Oh, he's not fulfilling my emotional needs. He's not doing this. And then the women will say, "What's your love language?" And their love language is him buying them crap. It's not really based on personality. And that's why in the past I've made fun of posts that say, like, "Oh, I thought it was all about love." Because you remember a post I did? There was like a woman, she was in an office, and she said, "When your coworker flirts with you, but he makes the same money as you." I blurred out her face, but she was going like, "Ew." And I thought, oh wait, I thought it was all about love. If it's all about love, why do you care how much money he makes? What is going on here? Why can you only love a rich person? Why can't you love a poor person? And that's why I brought up the example of Aladdin and Jasmine, the Disney movie, if you recall. And because what was Aladdin and Jasmine in the Disney movie, Jasmine had the money and Aladdin was literally a broke guy, you know? Shook says, "Mulan, like, ladies lay down and move mankind forward. Mankind must multiply." I mean, that's what the character is getting at, you know? Local Lico says, crazy way to think about it, but you're right. So wives are the worst that hookers. You know, it's an interesting point, because it takes looking in the black mirror is so important for female psychology, but it's very difficult. You know, it's so difficult for some. And the older I get, the more I'm comfortable with seeing my own faults or analyzing my past or contemplating on my future, having uncomfortable truths, and delving deep into male and female psychology. And you're just like, wow. And so when the author is talking about biological destinies, falling in love, love is not the point, arranged marriages, you're like, huh, well, let's just examine that. And it's not been pretty. Those years were just an anomaly, historically speaking, the commander said, just a fluke. All we've done is return things to nature's norms. Okay, so think about everything we've discussed thus far. Alright? The Empire of Gilead, the commanders, the red cloth with a large white winged eye that's embroidered with the drapery. You have the veiled daughters of the elites who are shy. They've never been alone with a man. The author favoring, again, the character Moria, who is saucy, sarcastic, masculine, contrarian. Our main character is very condescending towards Janine. And then we have the system of the unwoman, where if you don't do your duty to the empire, you know, you're going to get cremated, pretty much, or sent off to the colonies, which is toxic wasteland. And the Red Center is a key aspect here. A repurposed school, which has a gymnasium where all of the handmaidens sleep in cots around each other. Okay? Janine having a mental breakdown, and Moria being the one to slap her around and wake her up. And then, remember the grapevine of the Marthas, Serena Joy, the wife, and the others gossiping about how the handmaidens find ways to get pregnant if the commander is infertile. Okay? And how Janine was transferred to another household. Okay? And so, it's very important to just reiterate the political messaging, the cultural distinctions of the past and of now, and the futuristic ones, of women's place, what they should do, what men should do, and how a government can operate, and the role of religious expectations for women's conduct and behavior compared to the secular liberal atheist one. Okay? And so it's intense. And remember, she framed prayer in the Red Center. If you didn't do your job, prayer was used as a form of punishment. So you can kind of see the distinction of how a religious person prays, like when we do istihara, I believe how you pronounce it. I want to pray because I need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this, and I'm going to pray istihara and see if this path's right for me. We make dua. We like to pray. We pray 5 times a day, right? But for the feminists, that's like, no, we don't want to talk to God. But then you'll see their paganistic, occultic side come out, and they'll just do weird stuff around midnight and Halloween, and the moon is in eclipse, and blah, 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 the blood moon is out, the corn moon. Like, you see a lot of moon stuff with, and sun worship with some of the feminists. So, like what do they call them? Wiccans? Yeah, so you get some heathens, some Wiccans, some nature pagans in the anti-religious feminist crowd. But when you get like a very saucy liberal feminist, you begin to see like, hey, these people are pretty wild and non-conforming and pretty hard to get along with. Okay, so we'll pause here. I hope you enjoyed. I'm going to go get lunch started. We did 1 hour and 30 today, pretty much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and participating in the chat. I appreciate all of you. Please like, comment, subscribe, join the blog. I'm hungry, and I know the children are going to expect lunch here pretty soon. And prayer's going to come up not too far from now, but let's see what time. Yeah, in 2 hours is prayer, but I got to get lunch made and get it going for the kiddos. So take care, everyone. Hope you have a fabulous day. And bye-bye.